Good morning. Mr. Dean.
Good morning.
You're here because you conducted some DNA analysis in this case, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your first and last name?
Yes, my name is Cherie Fentress. The first name is spelled Sherrri. Last name spelled Fentress.
What is your profession and where do you work?
I'm a biologist forensic examiner for the FBI Laboratory DNA Casework Unit in Quantico, Virginia.
And how long have you worked there doing that type of work?
I've worked there for about 14 years.
What does your work consist of there? What kind of matters do you work on?
As a biologist forensic examiner, I perform primarily work on missing persons and unidentified remains cases, in addition to some other criminal casework. As an examiner, I will receive case information and determine what pieces of evidence need to be tested based on that information. I'll determine what the best course of testing is for those items, and then I am the one who will coordinate the movement of the evidence through the laboratory, directing the work of biologists along the way, and making key decisions at certain points in the testing.
I'd like to ask you some questions about your education, training, and experience that allows you to perform this type of work, okay? Can you tell us a little bit about your education first?
Yes, I received a Bachelor of Science in Animal Science with a concentration in Agriculture Biotechnology and minors in Biology and Chemistry from the University of Delaware. And then I went on to receive my Master of Science in Criminal Justice, specializing in forensic science from Michigan State University.
What about training?
In order to be an examiner, I go through a training that's about 2.5 years. It consists of practical laboratory exercises and oral boards, as well as moot courts, in order to make sure that not only do I understand the fundamentals behind what I'm testing, but also that I can express it in a clear manner for you in court.
And experience?
My experience, in addition to working for the FBI laboratory, spans about 10 years prior to that. I worked for the Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory as a graduate intern. I worked for a private laboratory also, and then for the 5.5 years prior to working for the FBI laboratory, I worked for the state of Delaware.
Have you testified as an expert witness on matters concerning DNA in courts before?
Yes, I have. I've testified in both federal and state courts.
And have you been admitted as an expert in each of those instances?
Yes, I have.
Now, at this time, I would offer Dr. Fentress as an expert in the area of DNA analysis forensic biology. No objection,
All right, she is so entered.
Okay, and Your Honor, just to clarify, it's not Dr. Fentress. I have a master's, but not a PhD.
Pardon me, thank you. Thank you for the correction. I just figured with all of that education.
Thank you.
Okay. Were you asked to conduct something called a kinship analysis or kinship comparison in this case that we're here for today?
Yes, and a kinship analysis is just an evaluation of relatedness between individuals.
And what did you receive to conduct the kinship analysis in this case?
In this case, I received a number of bone and tissue specimens. We would term those questioned items because we do not know where they came from or the individual that they came from. And I received reference samples from 3 individuals, Billy Joel Howell, Henry Moss Jr., and Leilani Simon, to compare to these unidentified remains.
And what is it that you're trying to figure out in a kinship analysis, as simply as you can put it?
Mm-hmm. In a kinship analysis, I'm just testing to see whether the relationship that's proposed could be supported by the comparison of the profiles that I obtain from the evidence. So in this case, I want to see if the unidentified remains could be the child of Leilani Simon and Henry Moss Jr.
And how do you go about conducting a kinship analysis? What do you do?
So in order to conduct that, we first need to test the items to recover DNA from them, and that involves a sequence of steps in the laboratory. We first take a small cutting or sampling from each of the items. We then will isolate the DNA, and then in the next step, we determine about how much DNA we were able to recover in that first step. And based on that, we can optimize the remaining steps where we do amplification, which is where you make billions of copies of targeted regions of the DNA. And then the final step where we determine exactly what is the profile at each of those locations. And just to clarify a little further, for the DNA casework unit, we look at 21 different locations that are expected to be different between individuals with the exception of identical twins, in addition to 3 locations that will provide information as to whether the individual who provided the DNA is male or female.
Now, was the technique you used in this case, is that something that can be tested?
Yes, it's something that can be tested for validity, yes.
And has it been subject to peer review and publication?
Yes, it has.
Are there standards controlling the technique?
Yes, there are standards called the quality assurance standards that are issued by the FBI that define everything from what personnel qualifications are required down to handling the evidence and what types of laboratory procedures should be performed for each type of evidence.
And has it attracted widespread acceptance within the relevant scientific community?
Yes, it has.
Okay. When you conduct a kinship comparison or kinship analysis, how do you phrase your ultimate results or conclusions? What does it sound like?
So when I conduct that kinship comparison, like I said, I'm comparing the profiles against each other. So what I would say is that based on the comparison of the DNA profiles, the results are however many times more likely if the individuals are related as stated than if they are not related.
And I'd like to draw your attention specifically to 2 items that you tested in this case. Do you see in front of you a document marked as States Exhibit 79?
Yes, I did.
And how many pages is that document?
It's 2 pages.
Now, these are bones that had already been examined by the forensic anthropologist, Dr. Christensen, before they came to you, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And we've heard testimony from her that she'd already identified these bones as human bones. What are the images that you're looking at? What are those from, and what do they show?
The images that I'm looking at are 2 of the bones that I tested. I can tell that they are, am I allowed to hold up the?
Well, let me get it
Okay.
into evidence first.
I can tell that they are bones that I tested because they are the laboratory number, 2022-02600, the item numbers, 29-1 and 30-1, and I recognize these pictures from my case notes.
Do they fairly and accurately depict these bones as they appear to you in the lab when you were working with them?
Yes, that is correct.
Your Honor, I would introduce this as States Exhibit 79.
No objection, John.
Sometimes admit it without objection.
Now, can you, I don't want to put this on the screen, but can you hold that up and walk the jury through what it is that you're looking at there?
Yes, so if you can see, this is the item 29-1 bone. If you see there's a square taken out of the center there, that was the cutting that we took in order to do the processing. And then on the next page, this is a little harder to see, but it's item 30-1, and it is a small bone right there in the center. Because of the size of the bone, we had to use the entire bone for this sample. So there's no specific cut area that you will see.
There's not an additional photo showing like a piece of it cut off because you had to use the whole thing.
That's correct.
Okay. You were able to take these 2 bones and develop a DNA profile of the person from whom they originated.
develop a likelihood ratio explaining how much support there is for the relationship, yes.
And what was your conclusion in that regard?
Your Honor, may I refer to my report to state the conclusion?
Yes, you may.
Starting with the item 29-1 bone, based on the STR typing results and the comparison of item 29-1 to Moss Jr. and L. Simon, the combined kinship index is approximately 4.1 quintillion. Therefore, the DNA profile obtained from item 29-1 is approximately 4.1 quintillion times more likely if item 29-1 is from the son of Moss Jr. and L. Simon than if item 29-1 is from someone unrelated to these individuals. And these results provide strong evidence that item 29-1 originated from Quinton Simon.
As to the next bone in Exhibit 79?
And for this one, based on the STR typing results, the DNA profile obtained from item 30-1 is approximately 12 quintillion times more likely if item 30-1 is from the son of Moss Jr. and L. Simon than if item 30-1 is from someone unrelated to these individuals. And these results also provide strong evidence that item 30-1 originated from Quinton Simon.
One moment, please, Your Honor.
Yes.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any cross?
I do, Judge.
Good morning, Ms. Fentress. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Okay, I don't get people like you on cross-examination very often, so I'm going to have a bunch of questions for you that I don't get to ask, okay? So let's start. Kinship analysis is, are you looking at alleles or genes or DNA? I mean, I don't understand the difference between the two.
Sure. So alleles, genes, and DNA are all related to DNA. When I say that I'm looking at different locations and I'm looking at the profile at those different locations, that would be where I'm referring to alleles. So to take a quick step back, when we look at the nuclear DNA, we're looking at what are called short tandem repeats. And those are short patterns of DNA that are repeated back to back to back. And that number of repeats may differ between individuals at any given location, and it can also differ between locations within an individual. So as I mentioned, we look at 21 of those different locations. What I had yet to say is that we receive half of our DNA from our mom and half from our dad. So at each of those locations, you would expect to see no more than 2 of those numbers. So for example, if at one location I'm a 15-17, it means that I received a 15 from one parent and a 17 from the other. So you're going to expect to see 1 or 2 numbers at each of those locations. Now, when I do my comparisons, where I'm looking at that unidentified profile compared to the potential parents' profiles, what I'm looking for is that pattern. Do I see 1 number from each parent at each of the locations in that questioned or unknown item? And if I see support for that, then I will go on and perform that kinship calculation for the statistic that I mentioned, that 4.1 quintillion or that 12 quintillion.
Okay. And the reason why I ask that is this is kind of me nerding out a little bit, but when you're doing the DNA, I mean, DNA is an amazing structure, is it not? Okay. Yeah. But basically what you're doing is looking at, and how many, let's just say, on a random piece of DNA from any person, how many different, I guess you would call it, locations are there on that strand of DNA?
So there's a large number of different locations on that strand of DNA. And actually, to clarify further, most of our DNA is actually going to be the same. That's what makes us human. It's a very small percentage. It's less than 1% that will differ between individuals. Again, that's with the exception of identical twins. So we, in our laboratory, target 21 of those locations.
How many locations are there?
I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how many locations there
Thousands,
are.
millions?
Thousands, I don't remember exactly how many.
All right. So, but you target these 21 particular locations and these other 3 locations. So you narrow your analysis down to basically 24 separate locations, right?
This is correct, yes.
Okay. And I'm curious because, again, like I said, this is kind of a weird thing to me. The bones you tested, one was 4 quintillion times more likely to be related, and the same bone tested differently was 12 quintillion times more likely to be related. What accounts for that statistical discrepancy?
So those were 2 different bones that were tested. When we obtain a DNA profile, I would say a common misconception is that if you obtain a DNA profile, you just got DNA and that's all that matters. But really that profile can range anywhere from one of those locations all the way up to the entire profile that we're targeting. The fewer locations you have, the lower that number is going to be when you have a calculation. So for the first bone, I was able to get 20 of the 21 locations for a comparison for that kinship statistic. And for the second bone, I was able to get all 21 of the locations. So that's where you get the slight difference in the numbers.
Okay. I was just curious. And I'm fascinated, too, by the actual manner and method of testing. So obviously you would take the bone, and I guess what would you do with the bone once you get it?
So once we get it, we want to make sure that the bone is clean on the outside. So we do some washing of the bone. We will then sand the area that we're using, that we're going to cut with what's a Dremel tool, if any of you are familiar with that. And then we will take a cutting, again with the Dremel tool, of that small section that we're going to be testing. We then use something called a freezer mill that freezes the bone, and then it uses a magnet to crush it into a fine powder. And then that powder is what we will then apply the chemicals to in order to isolate the DNA.
Okay. And then when you take the DNA and you test that, how do you get your statistical analysis from the testing of the DNA after that?
So once we test the DNA and I've obtained that profile, again, I'll do that visual comparison first. If in that visual comparison I didn't see evidence of a parental-child relationship, I would say that was an exclusion, meaning those remains could not have come from a child of the 2 individuals. Because I saw that pattern, I then took those profiles and I uploaded them into a kinship calculation software. And what that software does is it analyzes the proposed relationship, and based on the population frequencies, or how often do you see these different profiles in the population, it provides that statistic for how likely those profiles are if the individuals are related as stated.
And by profiles, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my understanding is it'll show these different genes or genetic markers. How does it display that? Is it like letters, numbers? How does it identify them?
So that profile in our case notes will be in the form of a table. So in that table, each of the locations is listed, and for each of the locations where a profile was able to be obtained, you'll see the numbers. So for example, the first location, D3, you might see that 1517. At another location, maybe FGA is another location, it may say 22, meaning 22 was received from mom and 22 was received from dad. So again, you'll have that table with each location, and next to it, the set of numbers associated with that location, and that comprises the profile for the individual.
And just out of curiosity, you said that when we were going through your bona fides to do this, how old are you again? I'm not trying to pry, but I was just curious. How old are you?
I'm 45.
Okay. And you got your Bachelor of Science from University of Delaware, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you got your Master's of Science in Criminal Justice. I didn't write that down, so I don't remember. Which university was that?
That was from Michigan State University.
Okay. How long does a Master's normally take?
I would say 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so I assume the bachelor's was a normal 4-year degree.
That's correct, yes.
And then 2 to 3 years for your master's, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then on top of that, you went to extra training at the FBI from about 2.5 years, I think is what you said, 2 to 2.5 years?
Yes, as an examiner, yes.
Okay, and part of that is they trained you how to present this testimony and evidence in court to be explained to normal people like me, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And of course, how to do the job itself, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been an examiner at the FBI?
I've been an examiner at the FBI for 10 years now. Prior to that, I was a biologist.
And how long were you a biologist?
I was a biologist for about 4 years. And to remind you of the difference, biologist does the laboratory processing, and an examiner will coordinate that processing.
And as an examiner, you basically, what you just described is you take the bones, you test the bones, and you translate that into, I guess, the results that you testified to here today, correct?
So as an examiner, I would assign the testing strategy for the bones. I would coordinate the testing. If there's any questions, the biologist will come to me. If there's any questions about how to proceed, there are several steps along the way where I have to make the decision as to how to proceed. And then once data is produced, I analyze that data, I generate the report with the conclusions, and then I'm the one who is able to testify to those conclusions.
Ms. Fentress, thank you so much for your testimony. I appreciate it, and it's been so informative to me, okay? Thank you.
And may this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
State may call its next witness. You certainly may.
Cynthia Morris-Kukowski.
The evidence you shall give the court and jury in the trial of this issue shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your first and last name?
Sure. My name's Dr. Cynthia Lynn Morris Kukowski. That's Cynthia. Last name is Morris-Kukoski.
And you're here today because you conducted some forensic toxicology analysis in this case.
Yes, I did.
Where do you work?
I work at the FBI laboratory in the chemistry unit.
And what's your official title or position?
I'm a forensic examiner toxicologist for the chemistry unit.
And how long have you been in that position at the FBI lab?
I've been in that position for over 20 years.
And what sort of things do you do there?
As a toxicologist, we work on biological evidence, things as blood, urine, vitreous, vomit, tissues, and sometimes foods and other stains.
I'd like to ask you some questions about your education, training, and experience, okay?
Okay.
Let's start with education. Can you tell us about what education you have that puts you in a position to do the work you do?
Sure. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Pharmacy from the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy. I have a Doctor of Pharmacy from the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy, a clinical residency in clinical toxicology from Hennepin Regional Poison Center.
And what about training?
At the FBI laboratory, we undertook a 2-year extensive forensic examiner training. It breaks down into both written didactic tests in various subjects, as well as competency tests on various items of evidence in various exams, as well as moot courts.
And in terms of experience, you said you've been working there for how long?
Over 20 years.
Could you give any kind of a ballpark whatsoever about how many cases you've done forensic toxicology casework in?
A gazillion. I couldn't even begin to.
How many zeros is that?
Yes, that's an over-exaggeration, but,
A lot.
yeah, a lot.
Have you testified as an expert witness in court before?
Yes, I have. I've testified in various military tribunals, as well as grand juries, state and federal cases.
And in those instances, have you been accepted by the court as an expert witness?
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, I would offer Dr. Morris Kukowski as an expert in the area of forensic toxicology.
No objection, Your Honor.
The witness is qualified.
I want to ask you some questions about your work in this case, okay? Did you perform some analysis in this case, the Quinton Simon case?
Yes, I have.
Okay. At some point, did your lab receive from the agents in Savannah here a pillow and a pillowcase?
Yes, we did.
And were you asked to look at that to see whether it was suitable for forensic toxicology analysis?
Yes, I was asked to look at it.
And can you tell me what the results of your review of the pillowcase was?
After visually looking at the pillow inside the pillowcase, I deemed it unsuitable for toxicology analysis, meaning either the debris or stain that was on there was too small and just couldn't be analyzed.
Is it the case that you need, if you're trying to do forensic toxicology on a stain of some sort, that you need a certain amount to be able to get off the ground in the process?
Yes, I've analyzed various stains over the years, be it urine stains from someone peeing their pants, vomit stains from being over an item after someone's had too much to drink, as well as blood stains that may or may not contain sweat stains. And basically doing this over 20 years and putting samples, putting some solution on various types of clothing or other household items, we look at the amount of volume that it takes for the particular procedure, and then by putting that on objects, I've pretty much gotten to the point where I can tell you that for most items, I need to cut a 2-inch by 2-inch square piece of material with a stain on it.
And your assessment was there just wasn't enough on this pillow or pillowcase for you to do that?
Correct, there was not enough.
Did you also receive something that appeared to you to be brain tissue?
Yes.
How did you know it was brain tissue?
I went down to talk with the forensic anthropologist after I worked with my chemist to check in the clothing and articles from the house, and had asked her what she received in the case, and she had said that using the alkaline drug screen, which uses solid phase extraction, which is a cleanup method that is used to do away with the debris and the biological material and fats and things that we're not interested in, and it concentrates in these individual one-use cartridges, has a filter in there, and it's filtering out all the stuff we don't want, all that debris, and then we can concentrate with a solution all the stuff we do want, dry it down, put that in a vial, and put that on an instrument called a liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometer.
Now, all right. This technique that you've described, evidently as simply as you can, is it a technique that can be tested?
Yes, solid phase extraction technique has been used for over 20 years. This procedure has been used at the FBI laboratory since 2006. These cartridges have been manufactured since 2005, has been used widely in the forensic toxicology community as well as in forensics itself. And the instrument is used not only in toxicology in our lab, but other divisions and also outside the laboratory.
All right, so after all that, what was the result or conclusion you reached as to whether this brain tissue contained any cocaine or cocaine metabolites?
I did not detect any.
Okay, so negative?
Not detected.
Okay. One moment, please. No further questions, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Dr. Kukowski, right?
Morris Kukowski.
Morris Kukowski. Okay. I'm going to jump back a little bit. Forensic toxicology analysis, do you only test for what you're asked to test for, or do you test for any type of toxicology?
Depends on the request.
Okay. And let's talk about this particular request, okay? Were you asked to test for any metabolites of controlled substances or specifically cocaine?
No, I was actually specifically asked to look for cocaine and cocaine metabolites, methamphetamine and its metabolite, fentanyl and fentanyl metabolite, as well as oxycodone and oxycodone metabolite.
Okay. And Mr. Dean said that he asked about the cocaine. You said it wasn't detected, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That seems different than not being present to me. I assume you use your words properly. So you said you didn't detect any cocaine.
Correct. According to our lab policy, we either detect something or not. It's considered either not detected, detective, inconclusive, or identified. That's
Okay.
just our terminology.
And did you have anything that was detected
In the brain tissue?
in the brain tissue?
No.
Okay. And so did you test for fentanyl?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Methamphetamine?
Yes.
Okay. Percocets?
Oxycodone?
Oxycodone? I guess oxycodone is another name for Percocet, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You corrected me, so.
Oh, sorry. Percocet actually is a combination medicine of oxycodone and acetaminophen. In this, I was not looking for the acetaminophen part, just the oxycodone.
Okay. So, and you said that, and I'm curious, so when you take the tissue, I didn't understand anything of what you just said. So,
Okay.
so let's assume you're talking to somebody who has a much smaller brain than you. What exactly does the testing usually include?
The testing includes you analyzing the sample with a negative control that has no known drug in it,
Okay.
the sample itself, and various positive controls.
Okay. All right. And with regards to, you'll tag us to the biological tissue, you'll take it, and you will
Process it.
process it. What's involved in processing it?
That's that solid phase extraction where you're removing and filtering out all the stuff you're not interested in, and then concentrating the stuff that's left in that cartridge filter to put on the instrument.
Okay. And how big of a sample are we talking when you do this?
It's a 1 gram, 1-to-1 homogenate, so 1 gram containing of 50-50 water and tissue sample.
Okay. So when you say 1 gram, I assume the total weight's 1 gram.
Correct.
Okay. So it's like half water and half tissue.
Correct.
Okay. I just don't understand, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm not misstating it. Okay. And then I guess you'll put that in that big long word thing you were talking about, the mass.
The instrument, yes.
The instrument, let's call it that. Okay.
Yes.
And then what does that do? Does that use some sort of, is it light, gas? I mean, I don't know how that works. So how does the instrument actually work at detecting things?
Okay. The instrument has pumps with fluid. The fluid then gets mixed and put through a column. The column then separates things out based on the chemical properties, and then goes to an instrument called a mass spectrometer that will actually tell you the mass of what drug you're looking for, and then will fragment it and look at the chemical fingerprint of that particular compound.
Okay. And when you say the mass, I guess is it some sort of light deal or some sort of chemical atomic weight deal? I mean, I don't
Yes,
understand.
it's the chemical formula. So you could take the formula of cocaine and add a hydrogen. It will give you the mass of cocaine.
All right. So I guess it's looking for that particular chemical property.
It's looking, yes, for that exact mass and the exact retention time. So as I said, things come out in a column and get detected in order. And each one has their own time that they come out with their own molecular weight and their own fragmentation.
Okay. And that being said, you said that there were certain standards, and I don't understand the standards, so I'm just asking, to either be classified as detected, not detected, or inconclusive.
Or identified, correct.
Or identified.
Yes.
So, and what are those standards? Because I didn't hear that. So, what are those standards, and how do they relate to this?
Okay, not detected means you analyze the specimen as you saw fit, you added the internal standard, which is that solution with very similar properties, that was detected in your sample, and you did not see the compound of interest. That's not detected.
Okay. And detected,
Detected means you tested it once and you may have seen something, but for some reason you either didn't have enough specimen or something happened that you couldn't repeat the test. Inconclusive means that you tested it, and when you tested that particular chemical and added that internal standard that has similar properties, if that particular compound did not come through and you could not see it, that's considered inconclusive, because if you can't see something that's very similar in your analysis, you can't say that you potentially saw or did not see what you were looking for.
and just to draw conclusions from this, so in this particular case, having the sample that you've tested, all you got the result, and I assume it was not a very much, because I looked at the picture if you have it. Do you have the picture that Mr. Dean showed you? I didn't see, if you would show me I guess this was the item, was that the item or was this the item that you showed me?
That
That one, okay. And so that was the item.
So we know, is that particular item marked?
It's States Exhibit 78, item number 3 on 78.
Thank you.
So that was the piece that you tested, and
a portion of it.
that portion of it at least. And with regards to that, I think that's all the questions I have, because I think you've explained everything to me so that I understand it, but I'm trying to make sure. You weren't able to test the pillow or pillowcase, correct? You were able to get enough testing material for this, correct?
For what, sorry?
For the item 78 that I just showed you? The brain tissue?
That's item 29?
It's, I don't know what your item number would be, but
Oh,
yes, I think it is. Hold on. Yes, item 29.
yes, sir.
Okay. And were you given any other samples to test, or were those the only samples you were given?
No, I was also given a pink washcloth, a shirt, the pillow that we talked about, pants, and a towel.
Okay. Did you perform any testing on those or no?
The pink washcloth was considered unsuitable for analysis. The towel was considered unsuitable for analysis, and I did test stains from the shirt and the pants.
Okay. And I'm just curious, when you said not detected, it means it just wasn't detected in that sample, correct?
Correct, in that tested portion.
That's all the questions I got. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Just a moment, Doctor. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, may this witness be excused.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so that is the last witness that will be called for now, correct? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is 5 till 11, so this is going to be an early break. We're going to begin and resume at 1 o'clock. So I'm going to ask that you be back at 12:50. All right. Again, do not discuss the case. Don't let anyone discuss the case with you. Don't watch any news. Don't do any research. You know the drill by now. All right. Have a good break.
Jurors exiting.